Welcome to part 3 of WPVM's City Council Candidate Primary Forums. Dr. Chris Cooper is the moderator. Today's candidates are David Moritz and Blake Butler. We had a few technical difficulties, and so we had to pivot to a different recording platform, but all went well, and thank you both candidates for joining and bearing with us while we worked out our technical gremlin issues. I'll turn the programming now over to Dr. Cooper, and thank you all for listening and getting more educated on the candidates, on the great candidates that are running for City Council in Asheville.
Well, I want to welcome everybody to the third candidate forum for the Asheville City Council. My name is Chris Cooper. I'm a professor at Western Carolina University, and I'm here as your host today. This forum is being hosted by WPVM, the voice of Asheville. So I want to thank them for their community spirit and the time on their airwaves. Before we introduce the candidates today, I want to tell you a little bit more about this election for folks who might need some of the details. We've got 20 people running for 3 open slots on the Asheville City Council. This is, I think, great news for folks who want more civic engagement in our local politics. Today we're having a conversation that will be driving towards the primary, which will be on May 3rd. The early voting by mail has actually already started for that. There's already been mail ballots sent out and accepted for this primary, but in-person early voting will start on February 12th and run through February 28th. If you are not registered to vote yet, we're recording this on January 28th, and as of today, it's just fine. You can still register to vote. The cutoff for that is coming up pretty soon, but during the early voting period, you can also do same-day registrations. You can go provide your information, your ID, register to vote at the very same time, and then cast that ballot that day. You cannot do same-day registration on Election Day, so it's important that you get that taken care of sooner rather than later. Yeah, we got 20 folks running for 3 open spots. You will vote for 3 of them on your ballot coming up in March. We'll then see 6 of them that will appear on our November ballots. We'll get to vote again on those folks. These are nonpartisan elections, meaning there's no D and there's no R next to their name or I or you or anything else. We'll just see the person's name. What that also means is that regardless of how you are registered to vote, you can vote in this primary as long as you are registered to vote in the city of Asheville. And my last technical point here may seem pretty obvious to say, well, I have an Asheville address. Of course, I'm registered to vote in the city of Asheville, but there are people with the address that says Asheville who are not actually in the city. So if you want to check out and make sure that your voter registration is up to date, call the Buncombe County Board of Elections, visit the Buncombe County Board of Elections, email the Buncombe County Board of Elections, or call the Buncombe County Board of Elections. They're your first line of defense, and they're incredibly helpful and can also steer you to the closest of the 11 early voting locations that we're going to have in this primary. So with that at the outset, we're going to introduce our candidates, have them introduce themselves. We're going to start with opening statements in about 2 minutes. I'm then going to ask some questions, and we will toss those back and forth in about 2 minutes per answer, and we'll be out of here in less than an hour. So again, thanks for your time. And with all of that, we will begin with Blake.
Thanks so much, and thanks so much for having this forum. It's so important to educate everyone in Asheville with 20 candidates running. My name is Blake Butler. I'm an Asheville native. I was born at St. Joseph's Hospital and grew up in the Beaver Dam community of North Asheville. Attended Asheville City Schools, graduating Asheville High, graduating Florida State University, had a stint in politics in Washington and in Raleigh. Came back to Asheville in '98 and was chairman of our local Democratic Party for 2 years, and then got out of politics. So for the past 26 years, I have co-owned and been a partner in 3 businesses, including Adapt Public Relations, a local media communications and public relations firm that has been in downtown Asheville since 2013, and I currently work in today. 72 DPI, a full-service web design firm that operated in downtown Asheville for 8 years, and I worked with hundreds of businesses and nonprofits, and we specialized in the real estate industry, and co-founding Local Edge Radio, a very innovative radio show with my co-host Leslie Grutch on Clear Channel Communications, allowing me to connect with Asheville all over again. I say all this because I think the city's at a time that they need some new energy, a new level of professionalism and leadership. And I want to apply my skill set and my experience to help Asheville. And that's what this is about for me. I've been thinking about it for 20 years. I have a track record of bringing people together, of finding compromise within chaos. And I think Asheville deserves that at this very pivotal point. So once again, thank you for hosting this. And I'm very excited to be running for Asheville City Council.
Thank you so much. David, go to you.
Thank you, and appreciate you having me on your radio program. So I'm running for city council based on pragmatic leadership, bringing that back to city management and city council. And my platform is based on four things: infrastructure, housing, safety, and economy. And I want to go through my experience in each of those areas. So first of all, I'm an engineer, and I've actually been involved in the building of infrastructure early in my career. In fact, I spent 2 years in Venezuela building infrastructure. So I know how it is to build something in a challenging environment. With the money that's coming into Western North Carolina focused on infrastructure, I think we need people on city council that understand actually what it takes to get things built. And that's a priority for the citizens right now, from what I hear from people and from my own experience. In terms of housing, I've been in the real estate sector for 25 years. I think we need people on council that have direct real estate experience. In fact, I think it's safe to say I'm the only person running that's actually built housing. I have a project in West Asheville called Craggy Park where I'm building 45 homes. I've also have approval for efficiency suites on Hilliard Avenue that I'm planning to build. Affordable housing downtown where it's needed. And so I also have an MBA in real estate and finance. And so we need people that understand the challenges of building here, because in the past 10 years, we've hollowed out our city, and a lot of the building has been going out in the county, which has created traffic problems, which has reduced our revenue generation, and all these problems stem from housing. Number three, safety. I've experienced hate and violence in the community here in Asheville, and it has no room here. And so I understand how important safety is personally and for the community, and it's something that's very important to a lot of people. And fourth is economy. And when I talk about economy, I talk about a strong economy for small businesses. I've run my own small business for 12 years. It's a real estate business here in Asheville. I've lived here for 12 years. But I also mean economy in terms of our budget and looking at the numbers carefully. I have 25 years of financial experience in investment banking, in real estate, and we need people that are going to take a sharp eye to the budget. As I've said, we need long-term thinking in terms of how we're going to generate the revenue to create the services we want. And I think in the past, the city has not talked about the trade-offs of the decisions that have been made. So I want to bring professional management to the city. I have 30 years of professional business and engineering experience, and I think that's what people want to see in city council today.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. And we'll begin with David with the first question. We're going to get into a host of topics today, some of which obviously may not be so positive, but I thought we'd start off with something a little more positive. What's one thing the city of Asheville does really well, and what would you do to maintain progress on that issue if you were to be elected to council? So, David?
I think one of the things that's amazing about Asheville is obviously our natural environment and the diverse group of people we have here that are so interesting and have so much energy. And so I think Asheville is really great at preserving its nature and embracing it. and also in terms of embracing the diverse people that we have here. And I think including the arts are so important. And so keeping arts as a vibrant part of the community is important. And that's one of the things that brought me here. In fact, I have a building in South Slope that is dedicated to renting out to artists and makers, and it's been an incubator for people like that. And so I participated in that. That's what brought me here. And I think Asheville has done a great job in nurturing that. And I think that's why a lot of people want to live here.
Great. Blake?
So I think Asheville has done a really good job of finding public-private partnerships. And with my experience and skill set, I hope to build on that. It could help us tackle some of the toughest problems that we're facing in the next few years. Now that we have DK that has moved over from the county, and now that she's our city manager, she could provide a lot of insight where maybe there is more room for collaboration and coming together as a community. I do agree with David in that going forward, it's about the arts and the outdoors, those things that make us unique in our culture and heritage. And that, again, is at the base, is about public and private partnerships and being sure we're all on the same page as we put Asheville on a pedestal again. I mean, we all have a vision of what we want Asheville to be, but it's nice if we can all come forth together with a shared vision. And I think those public-private partnerships allow more folks to get engaged with government, with nonprofits, and with initiatives and issues that matter the most.
Thanks so much to both of you. Appreciate that. Just a quick follow-up. So really great articulation of kind of what we do well. I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about if you were on council, if there are specific policies you would propose or support or strategies that you think the council, the city should take to maintain progress on those issues that you identified. So we'll start back with David on that.
So you're talking about how we can promote both the outdoors and our people. And I think what you've seen recently where the city has been good about that is we have funding that's coming for the recovery of Helene. And if you've seen, $15 million has just been allocated to helping small businesses, including artists and other businesses that have been affected by the storm. So I think Asheville has been very good about looking very carefully at the money and helping support the people after the storm. I think maybe some of that could have been quicker, I think some people would say, but it's a complicated process to go get the money from the federal government and then allocate it. And so I was very pleased that they've been helping local organizations that do support the arts and small businesses, because that's really a very important part. And I think the city should continue to do that.
Great. Thank you, Blake.
So I heard that question a little bit differently, and that maybe what they could do a little bit better and what I might be able to bring to the table. I think in a lot of cases, if I look back over the past couple of years, communication has been one of the biggest issues. And folks not knowing what's going on in council, how the process works. And in the latest case of learning about this $30 million deficit shortfall gap, whatever term you want to use, it's still $30 million. I believe that could have been communicated properly 3 months ago. I mean, I'm in the business of public relations and crisis communications, and it's important that your stakeholders, your citizens know what's going on. I think what you'll hear is a common theme from all the candidates that we do want more transparency in the process so we know how more citizens can get involved and have a voice. But we need to do a better job at that. And, you know, I can utilize my skill set to help with that. I do think it starts with communication. And right now, with so many people disengaged with city elections, I think we're seeing that they're waking up and saying it does matter. And with so many candidates running, we have multiple voices represented. So finally, Asheville is coming alive in a nonpartisan election, which I love because I don't think there's any answers in either party platform for Asheville, for Asheville's future. Partisanship brings divisiveness, vitriol. We cannot find the answers bringing that into city council chambers. So I'm really glad this is a nonpartisan race because this is about Asheville.
Great. Thanks to both of you. For the next
If I
question,
could-
we'll
if
start
I
with,
could just
sure.
follow up on that to be a little bit more critical, if that's what the question was geared towards. I agree with Blake. I think the surprise of the $30 million budget gap shouldn't have been a surprise. I do think overall, and one of the things I'd like to bring to City Council is really explaining to our citizens the trade-offs of the decisions we make. And I think that in the past, City Council has sometimes become performative, where they only talk about one side of the issue. So, for example, I've been trying to communicate with the citizens through my social media recently. I've done quite a few videos. One example would be the Sears project, where all it was performative, and the project kept getting delayed, and council didn't really explain the tax revenue impact of having that project there, the impact of not approving it, which now is just going to be an empty parking lot. So that's just one example where I agree with Blake. Communication has to be a lot more thorough with our citizens, and especially explaining the trade-offs of all the decisions that we make and the decisions we don't make. That's been a problem, I think, over the past 10 years, is some decisions get pushed aside because nobody wants to deal with them head on. And I don't think that's fair for people. I think we need to also evaluate things openly.
Great. And just for equal time, Blake, do you have anything else to add on that for about 2 minutes?
Well, as we look at what the three current council members, the incumbents, are faced with and also running for re-election in the next few months, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. As you know, by July the 1st, they're going to have to get this back to zero. So it's going to be a cut of services, programs, salaries, or raising property taxes. So the next city council is going to inherit even tougher decisions, but it's such a pivotal point right now. We need people on council that can say no, that can shift spending around to be sure we're taking care of our infrastructure, our core services, and some of the boutique projects might have to be put on hold for a little while. That's where we are, I think, in the cycle of this city, a little over a year out from this weather event that we had that destroyed us. But again, as a kind of a we mentality and that community of resilience, I think we look at it like, what can we do together? And council has to provide that leadership. And the buck stops right now, because I think councils in the past have spent hoping the next council would take care of it. Well, we're at the crossroads. It needs to be taken care of. And you got to be honest with folks. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm never going to be the type of candidate that's going to go out there and say, I want more of this, unless I'm going to follow up with, and this is how I'm going to pay for it, or this is how I propose we pay for it. It's not an I thing. I never got anything accomplished on city council. It needs to be a we thing going forward. A new team of thinkers, a new team of leaders that can put Asheville first. So again, I think as we look at this moment in time and everybody is surprised about the $30 million, let's not make the same mistake again and get a new group of thinkers in there that we know that can put Asheville first and the business of Asheville first.
All right. Thank you very much to both of you. So you mentioned the H word there, Hurricane Helene. So maybe we'll do some follow up there. Obviously everybody in not just the city but in the region sees every day the sort of impact that the hurricane still has on us. How would you assess progress? And perhaps even more importantly, what specific kinds of policies or strategies would you propose the city employs if you were elected to council? Blake?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first and foremost, just reflecting on Helene and being out here in Oak Forest in South Asheville, it brought our entire neighborhood together. So there was some silver lining that we met all our neighbors. I think that you go through life sometimes and you don't know the person next door. And we were able to come together and learn what neighborhood community is all about again. And I think that we have a lot of auditing and focus to do on what we need right now to repair our infrastructure. I worry that the storms took such a toll in certain places throughout our city and county that we're seeing, the results of that slowly on our infrastructure. I mean, I think it's time to look closely at our sewage system. As we know, there's still old pipes, terracotta pipes, and things, brought together. It's important as we look forward, as a metropolitan district. Now is the time to do that after an event like Helene. Infrastructure and core services, I think, are vitally important. And I wish we could, implement some of the things right now. And me being on the campaign trail with these other candidates, I mean, it's like, let's do this right now. But I think it's more about listening and figuring out how together we can build on what started. I know some of the monies that came down from FEMA have been delayed. I know there have been challenges here and there, but I can tell you that the focus back on infrastructure is what I keep continuing to hear when I go around the city and listen to folks. It's more of potholes in my lawn. It's potholes in my street. And eventually, I think people at least want to know that someone is listening. And that includes some long-term financial planning and how to take care of those potholes, how to take care of those sidewalks, and how to take care of some of those more questionable parts of our infrastructure. Because as soon as we say a hurricane like that would never hit Asheville again, I don't think we can say that, can we? I think we need to reinforce our infrastructure and be prepared.
Great. Thank you very much. David?
Yeah, I want to echo Blake's statements about how our community came together. I mean, even here, people came to my house to help cut trees and clear my driveway, and I saw that throughout the city, and it's amazing how the community came together. I think, though, the storm also exposed other strengths and weaknesses in our preparedness for it. I think the first responders and the people coming out have been amazing, but it also exposed a real weakness in our infrastructure that needs to be addressed. What's interesting is a few years ago, when asked by Mountain Express what I thought were the biggest concerns of infrastructure, I mentioned that our stormwater system is a real weakness given our topography and given how storms affect us here. And so no one could have predicted what happened in Helene, but I think it was clear to many people that our infrastructure wasn't up to the task. And this storm has really exposed the weakness in our system. And I think the city has responded by seeking aid and federal money, but I think most people think that the speed at which it's happening is not adequate enough. And I think that we need to do better in terms of getting the money, spending it, and putting it towards what is needed to get our city back running again. And I think a big part of that is going to be the stormwater, as I mentioned. When that fails, it can create an enormous amount of damage to property and people, as we've seen. We need to commit to using that money effectively to make sure that system and our water system, which we've seen signs previously that there were some problems with it when the water had shut down. and it didn't seem like it was addressed professionally. So again, as an engineer, as a business person, I think we need leadership at City Council that is going to focus on what is important to people's lives, not their feelings, but people's lives. And that's spending the money and getting the money to do it as quickly as possible.
Great. Looks like David like a, oh, excuse me, Blake would like a quick follow up there.
Just in thinking about that metropolitan kind of sphere of things, it's really true. Where I sit in South Asheville right now, the city limits keeps on getting moved back and back and back. It's all the way to Airport Road. The largest county high school, T.C. Robertson, a mile from me, is in the city limits. The largest elementary school in the county, Estes is in the city limits. My point being that the systems, whether sewage or infrastructure, we need to have a more metro viewpoint at this point. That's why it's really critical to have business-minded folks that have that experience to join council at this juncture and see Asheville for everything it's worth, not just West Asheville, but the growth in South Asheville, the growth in East Asheville, what's happening in North Asheville, and the impacts of the 9+ years of the I-26 reconstruction. I mean, these are huge issues when you go around and talk to everyone. But in that sphere, we're a metropolitan area. We learned the hard way after the storm that half of our neighborhood here in Oak Forest was on the North Fork water system as a backup. The other half was on Mills River. You start to see how we've grown so quickly. We have pieced things together. But let's audit those systems, including sewage, and be sure that we have those best pipes and reinforced pipes so we don't make a mistake in the future if we have another weather event like Helene.
Great. And for equal time, David, you have anything else to add there?
I think Blake brought up a good point, and I want to continue talking about that. And in my mind, that is that we haven't been operating like a real city in terms of the infrastructure and the buildings we need and the revenue we need in downtown area. So what happens is, for example, I'll bring up the Sears project again. That is a project that was proposed that looked really good, that was going to be done on a parking lot that's already concrete, that already is developed. And so when the city acts like an impediment to a good project, pushing back on something that would be good for the city in an area that needs growth, what happens is then the project actually, when it gets declined, they put it in the county, and you can just turn around when you're standing there at the mall, and you can see all the housing that was built on the top of the mountain that required clearing hundreds of trees. That development in itself is a cause to some of our stormwater problems. We need to build where we have the infrastructure. I've been advocating for that for 5 years at council, saying we need to build where the infrastructure is. We cannot afford to be pushing out. And where we see council have made it difficult to build something like at the Sears, then they approve something where they clear cut 100 acres in Fairview. And eventually the chickens come home to roost. And we've seen that. We cannot keep doing that and putting the strain on our infrastructure in that way. We need to follow a smart growth path and explain the trade-offs of those decisions that we make.
Great. Well, thank you both very much. And we'll begin with David on this next question. So the missing middle study, as you know, has recently made a lot of news, but hasn't come without controversy. Mayor Mannheimer noted to the Asheville Watchdog that there is, quote, definitely a divide on the council, end quote. What is your opinion of the missing middle study? And if you're on council, how would you propose that we proceed? David?
Well, first of all, I am disappointed that we engage in many studies that never see the light of day. That there should be a robust discussion. Now, disagreement on things shouldn't mean dysfunction. And unfortunately, that's what we've seen in council, in my opinion, over the last 10 years. So that document, I think, hasn't even had a robust public discussion with council. It keeps getting shelved. My opinion of the missing middle as a housing person myself is that it could have a positive impact in creating more density where we have infrastructure and creating some more housing options. So I'm in favor of the plan. I think some of the pushback on the plan has to do with some of the legacy neighborhoods. And I think it's important to listen to those neighborhoods that have had not had as much voice, or felt like they not have much voice. Some of the previous things that have been passed, for example, the flag lot and the cottage things, they've created an overlay so they don't impact those areas. That's something to consider. But I think we keep talking about a housing emergency, a housing crisis. The Bowen report says we need tens of thousands of units. And so the time for action is now. We need to take action and then evaluate. When we take action, we can, monitor it and decide whether we think it works or not. But we need to take action, and that's what I propose going forward.
Okay. Blake?
Well, I'll start off with this. I think the missing middle study is valuable, but I do not think we need to hire any more consultants going forward from other cities to tell us what Asheville needs. It is interesting as I go around and ask people what affordable housing means to them. It means something different to everyone. And I look at it in relation to competitive wages. And are we providing that in the marketplace? And so looking at that missing middle study, looking at some of those density requirements, I think there's important stuff in there. But I do think it's more important to right now take inventory of what's sitting there. And I can tell you there's more unoccupied apartments sitting here in South Asheville than projected. And there's certain places within Asheville that we just really need to be sure before we push forward that we have a hold on what we've already agreed to. And I was part of, fighting with my neighborhood group against a developer last year, going in front of city council. It's unfortunate that the process and the UDO and everything else allows the developer to be shielded, to be a ghost developer, pretty much a masquerade developer, where the neighborhood groups are forced to deal with the developer's attorney. That's not good government. That's not a good process. It's things like the UDO that when I hear, well, we cannot change that. Yes, we can. And we can tell anybody that's going to build anything in our city, look, we want you to appear at the first community meeting. These people want to meet you. That's part of transparency too. So just know that, as we look at things that, together we can address, I like to see more serious councils when we're addressing serious issues like the missing middle. Where does that apply to Asheville? And where doesn't it apply to Asheville? And where can we do a better job on the decisions we've already made? Are they working? We can evaluate those. And what can we do in the future, I think, to build on that middle that we lack? Again, it means different things to different people. But the affordable housing thing is, to me, is turning into more of a buzzword in certain places. And we really need to drill down to the issues on what that truly means for a city like Asheville.
Maybe we'll just pick up right there and go back to David and then to Blake. What does affordable housing mean for a city like Asheville, David?
Well, first of all, we talk about people spending and affordability. A huge amount of what people spend is on their rent or their mortgage. So I think housing is crux to so many of the issues we have. And there have been studies showing that more housing reduces homelessness, which seems logical, but somehow many cities fail to actually implement that. So I think affordable housing is two main things. One is we need more housing choice for people. Now, clearly, the dream for many people is to buy a home. That dream is starting to slip away for many of our young people, especially. They don't see houses being affordable. Over the last 10 years, if you've looked at the data since the 2008 financial crisis, we've been building across the United States fewer homes every year than before the 1950s, despite the fact that our population has doubled since then. So this is really a national problem. We can do what we can to help. And I think there are some cities like Charlotte have done it. Not that we want to become Charlotte, but the first step is just building enough housing so people have choice, and doing so near downtown, along transit, so that it can be effective for people who want to use transit, who want to be close to their work, and not have to commute from very far away, from Long Shoals Road, where you're getting so much development that's far away and creating traffic and problems. So that's number one. Then to look at the deeply affordable housing, which is the type of stuff, that's a community effort. And I think one of the things, and I see things a little differently than Blake on this, and that is there's this villainization of the developer. Now, I get it. In a perfect world, nothing changes. But the reality is our city's growing. And if we're going to put our head in the sand and pretend that's not happening, that's not a solution either. And so I agree. It has to be very transparent. And it currently is quite transparent. Developers have to have public meetings. They have to go to multiple committees. But we have to be pragmatic in terms of where we think the housing is best for the city, along the transit lines, near downtown where we already have the infrastructure. And our policies in the past, including our zoning, have not fit well with addressing that problem. And I know they want to redo the UDO and the zoning, but it's a long process they plan on implementing. I don't think that's what we should do. I think it's okay in the long term. We need to make some policy changes in the near term to address this as a community. So for the deeply affordable, that's a community issue, something that the city has to get more directly involved in to make that happen, because it can't be done purely in the private sector, but the private sector has to be encouraged within the boundaries of what we want as a city to be able to build the housing that people need, especially our younger generation who's being completely pushed out of the market currently.
Great. Blake?
So my answer is going to be a little short and sweet. More housing choices, applying density, where possible, and really, like when I say the word audit, just really a close look at, where we can apply more housing choices that make sense. Possibly utilizing use by right in new developments, taking a closer look at that. I still am not a huge fan of conditional zoning and conceptual plans. But again, it's something in this whole team mentality that I envision, that I plan to learn more how that could be fine-tuned and the process could become more transparent. I will say that I've been pivoting a little bit on affordable housing to continue that discussion on competitive wages. I think it's really important to remember that we have folks that come here to Asheville that already have plenty of money and aren't looking for employment, and then just look around for the right house to buy. Then we have those folks that are in the service industry and that are really the tributaries and the fuel of our downtown and our restaurants and our small businesses. So there's just a different, a diversity of folks that's looking for what's affordable. And in that becomes competitive wages. Could I afford to live in Asheville if I got this type of job or this type of job? So I do think, just taking it one step further, when I've heard that we've lost the Costcos and the Amazons of the world, I've thought, what gives? Why would we lose them? They would love to come to our area. We need those competitive wages. And it's more about acting in the best interest of Asheville, not creating infighting between the council and maybe the chamber and the EDC, because I can tell you the Amazons and the Costcos of the world watch that. And other companies might say, well, don't go to Asheville. There's way too much drama there. They'll end up fighting each other on who's meeting with you and who's going to do what. Well, I can tell you this much. I love to close deals. I mean, in a sense, like I've loved to sit there and when we've landed a web design project or a new public relations client, I feel just so fulfilled, like, yeah, we did it. Now we get to finally work on this project. And again, I think, together, this is something we have to address. Who's the team we send out to go see Costco? It's not a revolving door of who we pick, and it can't be personal, and we can't govern anymore with emotions. We have to govern in the best interest of Asheville, and that includes landing additional companies that can provide competitive wages so we can start to rethink what affordable housing actually means in our market.
Great. Thank you both very much. Talking a lot, both of y'all, talking a lot about collaboration. So maybe we'll sort of pick up that piece for a second. North Carolina is not, as both of y'all know, a home rule state. And so what that means is that local governments have to, whether we like it or not, oftentimes go to the state government for permission, for resources, and for a variety of projects. So the relationship between the city of Asheville and the state government, and particularly the General Assembly, has been sometimes positive, sometimes, frankly, a little contentious. How do you view the city's relationship with the General Assembly, and what types of policies do you think could provide kind of a path forward for that kind of collaboration? Blake, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, besides being a partner in my public relations firm, I was head of the North Carolina Industrial Hemp Association for 3 years when we birthed the hemp industry here in North Carolina, and actually from Asheville. And I learned a lot about dealing with state government, dealing with lobbyists, dealing with folks in Raleigh that had a certain view of Asheville, of being the liberal progressive city that it is. But that's important as we look forward and think, well, we want to have those partnerships with state government when it comes to travel and tourism, economic development. We know our region is an organic economic engine that the rest of the state puts on a pedestal. But I do think it starts with communication, picking up the phone, calling those legislators, being sure you have a relationship where it matters. A lot of what I told you when I introduced myself connects me to hundreds of businesses and nonprofits and folks throughout Asheville, but relationships matter. They do, especially now. And I have a track record of bringing people together, not only in Asheville, but across the state, just working with all those farmers, with state legislators, and with state government. But as a member of city council, I think that experience is very important because I'm very comfortable going down to Raleigh, lobbying for the best interest of the city, and in tough times, like we know we're getting ready to be faced with, going ahead and making tough choices. We have to look at ourselves as a partner with the state. It doesn't matter on the partisanship environment. And like I said before, maybe there's some other public-private, which includes state government and Asheville opportunities that we haven't put our finger on. And I hope to explore more of those. I think that is the answer to addressing a lot of the problems, because the money coming from government, whether it's local, state, or federal, it's just not enough money. And it's never going to be enough money. We need to find places where we can come together, find compromise, and that includes how we work with state government. And, I think from this point on, knowing that we have a kind of a interesting balance, again, folks would call us a purple state, knowing that the Republicans have the supermajority and, we have a Democratic governor in Josh Stein. That's a great thing. We need to carry out that balance here in this nonpartisan kind of thinking in Asheville by putting Asheville first. And that including sometimes going to Raleigh and saying, we need some help.
Great. Thank you very much. David?
I'm glad that our election for city council is nonpartisan and that the office of city council is a nonpartisan office. I think we have to have more proactive communication with the state and not just be reactive. From my observations, we tend to be reactive when we need things, for example, in Helene, whereas I think we need to have a long-term, better communication as one voice from city council on a nonpartisan basis with the state and maintain that relationship. I used to work in investment banking. Relationships are everything in that business. I'm currently running my own business for 12 years, building a development in West Asheville, working with so many different people, including getting approvals from the city. So I understand how to build those relationships. And I think that's a long-term thinking that we need at city council. I feel like we've fallen for short-term thinking, which can be very attractive. It's something that we can all fall towards. We need to go back to long-term thinking and building long-term relationships. And I think that also has to do with the county. I feel like, given the way our taxes are raised and the way we spend money, I think we also have to sit down at the table more proactively with the county and negotiate a little bit better. For example, our transit. Our transit is obviously really important, but because of all the development in the county, our transit dollars get stretched out there, and they don't pay their fair share for that. So whether it's the county or the state, I think we need to be unified, and I'm happy we can do it in a nonpartisan way. We have to maintain the relationships, but at the same time, to the extent that the city has leverage, we also have to be a better negotiator to make sure that the citizens of Asheville get our fair share from the state just as much as they're getting from us. And so that would be my approach to dealing with the county and the state.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's been a great conversation. I want to sort of go to one last question, and then we'll go to closing statements after that. So we'll begin with David on this one. Obviously, tourism has been a very successful driver of the local economy for going on a century now. But some have called it a devil's bargain, arguing that the money too often goes out of state and too often helps keep wages down and rents high. What is your take on the proper role of tourism in our economy? And probably more importantly, what kinds of policies would you enact or support on city council to maintain that proper balance, David?
Tourism is a very important part of our economy. We can't pretend it's not. And so I think that we need to continue to support tourism as an important part of economy, especially as we're recovering from the devastation that occurred here. There are so many small businesses and workers that rely on this, and we need to continue to make it an important part of our economy. It's just the reality of Asheville. At the same time, we have to diversify our economy. As again, this storm has shown us, any place, including countries or cities that rely too much on one crutch, cannot withstand a crisis. And so I think it's really important that we focus more effort on diversifying our economy. And that also means that we can't keep pretending that we can just say no to things and not suffer the consequences of those decisions, which I think has happened in the past, like Costco. I mean, they're still going through it, but we act as if we're doing them a favor. Whereas everybody I hear all the citizens I hear want a Costco. In fact, what also doesn't get discussed is how much a Costco in that location could alleviate traffic of people instead going to Sam's Club. There's not a lot of amenities over there, but the growth is continuing. There's only like an Ingles and maybe an Aldi's getting built. And so we kind of sometimes feel like we make these decisions in a bubble and don't actually look at how it impacts our overall economy. And so I think that we need to maintain tourism as an important part of our economy, but work in ways that we can diversify our economy and attract more businesses here. And that's really important. And when it comes to, for example, the TDA, I think a continued negotiation and trying to see if we can use some of that money where we think it'd be more effective, as opposed to just purely on marketing. I think some people have issues with the amount of money that goes to marketing when our infrastructure or certain things cannot cope with what we're trying to pitch to the outside world. So I think there needs to be a better balance with the way that money is spent. And so that's my overall approach. I think it's important to realize we're driven very much by tourism, but we also want to have a strong foundation in other areas of our economy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Blake?
Well, as an Asheville native, I've seen our tourist economy grow organically. When I was younger, it was all about the leaf season, when folks would come into Asheville to see the leaves. And we had the slogan, Cool Green Asheville, which I love, by the way. You know, used to be on t-shirts. I kind of like that vibe that we had back then. But understanding the history of how we built that tourist economy, from the Vanderbilts opening up the Biltmore House when the city needed it the most, from L.B. Jackson, you know, shining a searchlight from the top of the Jackson building in the late 20s, all around Western North Carolina, that says, come to Pack Square, come trade. We have this searchlight. We have electricity. We're the beacon. And that was, as you know, the tallest skyscraper in Western North Carolina. But that's that organic kind of tourist economy that we built because of the culture and the heritage of our people and some of the natural things that happen around us, like the leaves changing. So now, as I look at it, you know, we've created all sorts of different, you know, revenue streams when it comes to our tourist economy. If I think about, you know, in the last 15 to 20 years, we were definitely all hands on deck when it came to Beer City, USA. And we were very successful there, as, you know, we were put on the map for so many breweries, but it created jobs. And it allowed some of our local community colleges to bring in the science of what it means to brew beer. So there was a lot of silver lining in what we did there. But if you pivot to right now, I would love to see a more organic approach, like all hands on deck for Beer City USA, for the arts and outdoors. Something that we can all put on a pedestal. We know that the RAD coming back online is so important to the future of how downtown operates. The galleries downtown are joining together, and the DAD. This is about all the arts in Asheville. Arts are for everyone, and outdoors are for everyone. So just building on what we have here naturally, people are still going to paint. They're still going to be woodworkers, whether we put them on a pedestal or not. But it's time to start all coming together and realize how we're unique as a city and what gives us character as a city. And it's some of these things that are right in front of us. We just got to embrace them again and all get back on the same page. And that's what I think creates a diverse tourist economy that locals can be proud of too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this has been a great conversation. We will move to closing statements of around 2 minutes. And Blake, we will start with you on this one.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for providing this forum. I really appreciate it very much. And thank you to David, who is with me today in this discussion. This is the first time I've ever met David, and I know we'll see each other in a lot of these candidate forums. But as I said before, I have in the last 26 years been part of 3 different businesses, worked with multiple nonprofits and community partners. I'm an Asheville native that grew up here, graduated high school here at Asheville High, and I want to bring my experience, my skill set to Asheville City Council to put Asheville first. And I mean that in that I've thought about running for office for 20 years. And this is my first time ever running for office. And it means a lot to me. And I think this is a serious time for serious candidates. And you must have a track record of bringing people together. There is no room for I. You will hear more we in everything that I talk about going forward. And I look forward to listening to more of the Asheville stakeholders, citizens, and voters in the coming weeks as we head into the March 3rd primary. So thanks again for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. David?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I also want to thank Blake for this conversation. It's been great to talk about issues that are important to the city. I want to reiterate pragmatic leadership, and I've been trying to make that interesting, but at the end of the day, it's blocking and tackling, and I think we need to bring professional management back to City Council. I have 30 years of professional experience as an engineer, as a business person, 12 years here running my own small business. And it's been amazing so far, putting my hat into this race, talking to people all over Asheville and hearing their concerns. And I have to say that the idea of professional management at City Council has been really well received. And I want to be honest, I want to be straight talking, and I want to make sure that we communicate the trade-offs of all the decisions we make together as a community. And we can only do that if we're transparent and if we talk to all the citizens here. We can have disagreements without being dysfunctional. And I think people feel like the leadership has been dysfunctional. And I welcome the opportunity to be on City Council, to work with the people on City Council, and to make better decisions for the long-term viability of our city. And one specific point I want to make is that housing constantly comes up as a major issue here. And we want to bring housing to people, to new people, to young people, while at the same time protecting existing residents. And that's something that requires significant thought. And I'm the only City Council member who has direct experience in the housing sector, having built housing, trying to bring affordable housing downtown. And so since it's so wrapped up in all the decisions we make as we build our city and as we make it viable for everyone, I think that's something for people to consider. So I hope I get to meet more people during this campaign. It's been wonderful to talk to anyone. People can go to my website, which is David for AVL, and there's my phone number and email. I welcome anybody to contact me directly, and I would continue to be open and responsive should I be elected to City Council.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much, and thanks to WPVM for hosting us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was so good.
That was
And
fun.
it was
David and I obviously can do that every day if we need to. And
Yeah.
next week we're going to
And-
start doing it every day.
And